Maybe public school would be a better fit for a student of Cooper's background, Mrs. Thurston sniffed, her cold blue eyes flicking disdainfully over my thrift store blazer and paycheck-to-paycheck shoes. Prescott Academy has a certain standard to uphold. We cater to the most elite families, you understand. I smiled tightly, pulling out my weathered checkbook and Mont Blanc pen, a gift from my late mother. With a steady hand, I filled out the hefty tuition check, signing with a flourish. The snooty administrator's eyes widened behind her cat-eye glasses as she took in the number of zeros. Just then, the door flew open and Principal Vanderbilt rushed in, his comb-over askew. "Lydia, I didn't realize you were with a parent." "I apologize for the interrupt dash," he froze, paling as his gaze landed on me. "Mrs. Blackwell, what an honor. Are you here to tour the New Arts Wing? The Jefferson Blackwell Memorial Library is the crown jewel of our latest expansion." I let the question hang in the air, savoring the dawning horror on Thurston's pinched face as realization set in. Who exactly had she been condescending to? The billionaire widow whose generosity kept this ivy-choked institution afloat, that's who. Smiling sweetly, I handed her the check. "I believe this should cover the first semester. So thrilled Cooper will be joining the Prescott family. He's been dreaming of attending since Jefferson, and I used to bring him to homecoming as a toddler." I turned to the principal, dismissing Thurston with a flick of my gaze. "Walk with me, Alfred. I'd love to see what you've done with the place. Jefferson always said our son deserved the best education money could buy. And money is something the Blackwells have in spades, isn't it?" Thurston's spluttering faded as I sailed out on Vanderbilt's arm, the click of my heels on polished marble a cadence of vindication. In the opulent hush of the hall, hung with oil portraits of prestigious alumni, my deceased husband's face smiling among them, I let the final traces of my hardscrabble past fall away. I was Lydia Stonewall Blackwell, the coal miner's daughter turned society queen. And this was my kingdom now. As we glided across campus, Vanderbilt kept up a steady stream of obsequious chatter, detailing the many ways Prescott was spending the frankly obscene endowment I controlled. The Jefferson Blackwell Memorial Science Labs, the Blackwell Center for Performing Arts, the Blackwell Athletic Complex, my husband's name, and by extension my own, was plastered on every ivy-covered edifice. It was a far cry from the rundown classrooms and second-hand textbooks of my youth, from the shame of being the poor kid in a world ruled by generational wealth. I'd worked my ass off to escape those hollers, waitressing and bartending and clawing my way through state school, only to find myself shut out of the gilded halls of power. No connections, no pedigree, no hope of cracking the glass ceiling. Until Jefferson waltzed into my dive bar and changed everything with a wink and a Macallan neat. I'd never meant to fall for a Boston Brahmin, let alone the most eligible bachelor in New England. But Jefferson Blackwell had a way of getting past my defenses, of seeing the diamond in the rough buried beneath the hand-me-downs and Appalachian twang. To the shock of everyone, most of all myself, we'd embarked on a whirlwind romance that catapulted me from behind the bar to the front page of the society rags. The coal miner's daughter and the blue-blooded heir. We were a media sensation, a regular fairy tale. And like all fairy tales, it had ended in tragedy. A drunk driver, a rain-slick road, a shattered windshield, and a shattered future. Just like that, my handsome prince was gone, and I was left alone, a stranger in a strange land of old money and older prejudices. If it wasn't for Cooper, the little piece of Jefferson I had left, I would have crawled back to my holler to lick my wounds. But I couldn't give up, couldn't slink away, and let the blue bloods gloat over the poor little coal miner's daughter who thought she could play in their world. So I dried my tears, squared my shoulders, and taken my place as the head of the Blackwell Empire. Jefferson had made me his sole heir, knowing I'd have the grit to carry on his legacy. To use the Blackwell fortune and influence to make a real difference in the world, to create opportunities for other diamonds in the rough. And that started with making sure our son had every advantage, every open door, that money could buy. Cooper would never know the sting of hand-me-downs, the gnaw of an empty belly, the despair of a future defined by lack. He would grow up swaddled in cashmere, his mind nourished in hallowed halls like this one. So what if it meant rubbing shoulders with snobs who sneered at my humble roots? I'd faced worse in my climb from the coal fields to the upper crust. I'd endure 1,000 Thustons and their thinly veiled barbs if it meant Cooper could hold his head high. And here we are, the jewel in Prescott's crown. Vanderbilt's nasal voice pulled me from my reverie. We'd arrived at the library, a grand, light-filled structure of gleaming glass and timeless stone. Etched above the doors in regal font, the Jefferson Blackwell Memorial Library, donated by Lydia Blackwell in loving memory. My heart clenched, the way it always did when I saw my husband's name carved in gilt or granite. The way it always would, no matter how many years separated me from our stolen future. With a steadying breath, I followed Vanderbilt into the silent stacks, the scent of leather and paper and possibility enveloping me like an embrace. We emerged into a vaulted reading room, all warm wood and plush chairs, a massive portrait of Jefferson presiding over it all. It was like a punch to the solar plexus, seeing those laughing eyes, that slightly crooked nose, captured in eternal youth. Vanderbilt, bless his blue-blooded heart, pretended not to notice as I blinked back tears. He knew how much this place meant to me, how every book on these hallowed shelves was a love letter to the man who'd believed in me when no one else had. The man who'd looked at a scrappy bartender from the wrong side of the tracks and seen a queen in the making. He'd be so proud, Vanderbilt murmured. Of Cooper. Of you. Of the legacy you're building in his name. I swallowed hard, fingers grazing the gilt frame. I hope so. I hope I'm doing right by him. By our son. Never doubt it. Vanderbilt's voice was firm. Jefferson knew what he was about, choosing you. Anyone with eyes could see you were a force to be reckoned with. Hell, half the faculty placed bets on how long it would take you to end up running this place. A watery chuckle escaped me. I'm not sure I'm cut out for academia. Unless you're looking for a lunch lady in chief. Vanderbilt waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. You've got more steel in your spine than any blue blood I've met. Jefferson used to say you were the brains behind the Blackwell fortune. That you could have built it all yourself, if the world was fair. I ran a hand along the spines of first editions, their gold leaf titles winking in the light. Wealth of Nations. The Art of War. The Prince. All the great works of strategy and power, the books Jefferson had insisted I read, had debated with me over takeout lo mein at 2 a.m., when the rest of the world was sleeping. The world isn't fair, I murmured. If it was, he'd be here to see his son grow into the amazing man he's becoming. To watch Cooper carry on the Blackwell name. He is here, Vanderbilt insisted. In every book, every brick, every mind shaped within these walls. In the son you're raising to be every inch his father's successor. The tears came then, silent and unbidden. Vanderbilt pretended not to notice, busying himself with a stack of leather-bound tomes. I let them fall, let myself feel the weight of my husband's absence, the bittersweet triumph of building this shrine to his memory. When my eyes were dry, my spine straight once more, I turned to Vanderbilt with a brittle smile. Forgive me, I'm not usually one for misty nostalgia. Too much coal dust in my blood, I suppose. He returned the smile, eyes knowing. Nothing to forgive. Shall we head to the dining hall? Chef Buchanan has prepared quite the feast in your honor. I laughed, taking his proffered arm. Far be it from me to refuse a free meal. Lead the way, good sir. We exited the library, the click of my heels echoing in the marbled silence. As we walked, I caught sight of my reflection in the spotless windows, superimposed over the rolling green of the campus lawns. I'd come a long way from the hollows, from the girl who used to stare at her second-hand shoes during the Pledge of Allegiance, praying her growling stomach wouldn't betray her poverty to the class. That girl had been buffeted by the cruel winds of fate, battered by the slings and arrows of a world that valued pedigree over grit. But she'd weathered the storm, transformed the wounds into pearls, the hardship into armor. And in doing so, she'd made a silent promise, to herself and to her son. Never again would a Stonewall go hungry. Never again would a Blackwell bow to those who thought themselves their betters. Cooper would inherit a kingdom built on coal and sweat and the unshakable belief in the power of a dream. He would walk these rarefied halls with his head held high, his name etched in gilt and glory. My husband was gone, but his legacy lived on. In the child we created, in the empire I steward, in the diamonds in the rough we would pluck from obscurity and polish to a shine. Let the blue blood sneer. Let them clutch their pearls and their pedigrees. The future belonged to the hungry, to the dreamers, to the ones with coal dust in their blood and stars in their eyes. The future belonged to the Blackwells. And I would make damn sure it was a future worth inheriting. Smiling, I followed Vanderbilt into the fray, into the glittering whirl of the elite. They could keep their petty hierarchies, their shallow prejudices. I had a world to conquer, one checkbook at a time. And no one, not even a snippy administrator with more money than sense, would stand in my way. After all, I was Lydia Stonewall Blackwell, the coal miner's daughter, the billionaire's widow, the queen of all I surveyed. And I was just getting started.